Today I'm joined by Erik van Vulpen, founder of AIHR, who are leaders in HR upskilling, digital HR, and HR innovation. How are you doing, Erik?
I'm doing well. How are you, Chris?
Not too bad. It's been a while, right?
It has been a while. It's been quite some time. Like, I think the first time when we spoke, there was no, COVID. You might have heard of it, but it's been going around.
Yeah, it was a year and a half ago, when things were normal and the world didn't feel like it was falling apart. So, but how have you and the team been through all of this?
Yeah, despite the horrible circumstances, we've been very busy. Of course, HR is the Academy to Innovate HR, so we focus on upskilling, and the need has been astronomical. Especially during this time where there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of people working from home. So it's on the one hand, it's valuable information that you learn, and at the same time, it's also people are looking for more stability, for more assurance, and then that's also why they come to the academy. So it's been a busy and interesting time.
For those that aren't aware of yourself and your background, give everyone a quick intro and to yourself, your background, and obviously why you started this business in the first place.
I'm Erik van Vulpen. I have a background in law, psychology, and business administration, specifically I&O psychology. But I think most of the listeners probably have a similar background. Very interested in HRM. Always been very interested in what are the processes in the organization that's the softer processes that in the end make a business impact. So if people are more engaged, what is then the impact on bottom line performance? Those kinds of relationships have always fascinated me during my studies, and after my studies, together with a business partner, Nando Steenhuis, I started AIHR, which is the Academy to Innovate HR. We started essentially just writing, both part-time writing about HR analytics, people analytics, data-driven HR, evidence-based HR, whatever the name is you want to give it. And we started writing about it, and it got picked up, in the US and the UK, all around the world. And the people started reaching out to us saying, it's very interesting to read an article about this or to read 3 articles about it, but do you guys also know a place where I can, actually learn more about this? And we didn't get that once, we didn't get it 5 times, we got it a whole lot of times. And at some point we said, maybe we should start making these courses, and maybe we should start investing it, and start offering people what they're asking for. And that's essentially how the Academy to Innovate HR, AIHR, was born, very much in the space of people analytics. And since then, in the last 4 or 5 years, we've grown out of people analytics and are now covering the full HR spectrum. With a focus on upskilling, and there's always an analytics component in there, because we think that's really the future, and also a digital component. How can you leverage digital in order to make more impact? So that's been a very, very amazing journey.
It's incredible, and clearly there was a need, right? So you kept hearing it, and then you made it happen. So it's kind of the similar reasons for why I kind of left my last job and started this business as well. We kept hearing kind of that need from the HR audience of a community that can come together in a very authentic, open way to share best practice ideas. And obviously that's what we try and do through the show and through all of the events and stuff that we do as well. So it's great work that you're doing. And I'm sure now more than ever, they need that advice and guidance. Have you seen an increase in traffic to your blog and to obviously to your courses and the work that you do?
Yeah, we've seen a big increase. We've been a fast growing company since we started. But especially now, with people working from home, we actually saw around, I think, beginning of March, it was when, in the US, everyone was starting to work from home, and also in Europe, we kind of saw a drop off of around 30-40%, because everyone, was driving around with computers and monitors and doing the very operational work. But afterwards, when it was the kind of the new normal 2-3 weeks later, we saw a big spike. And as I said earlier, I think it's because, on the one hand, people are sitting at home, so they have more freedom to also invest more in their own upskilling. All the offline conferences, trainings, they're simply not happening. So then an online place where you can connect, but at the same time also learn is where people flock towards. And I think it's also the increased insecurity about where the market is going. So getting those more hard skills, learning them, I think also provides a certain security. So yeah, we've seen an incredible uptick after as soon as it became the new normal. We've seen an incredible uptick.
obviously looking through all of your courses, the content, everything you do, where are you seeing most of the traffic directed towards? What are the main courses, programs, etc., that you're seeing people? Because it'd be good and I'm sure our audience are going to be not going to be surprised probably by your answers, but I'd be interested to know where are you seeing the downloads, where are you seeing the signups, what particular pieces of content?
Probably the same places where you're seeing it, Chris. So I should turn the question around. But what we're seeing is a very big, analytics has for a long time. That's been our origin, where we came from, and we still see a huge demand for more, data driven upskilling. And I think that's relevant. If you look at today's job description of an HR business partner, there's always a fundamental part of analytics that's in there that 5 to 10 years ago was not in there yet. So that analytics part, I think, is incredibly important, and also something that we see still. I think that's one of the main drivers of interest. I think the other corner, and analytics can be, the more advanced analytics, but very often it's more the basic, like how do I work with data, interpret data, and work with dashboards in my day-to-day work. That's where we see most of the interest when it comes to analytics. And then also in digital HR, digital HR is this abstract new thing for a lot of people. How can you leverage it? How can you leverage different tools, HR tools, leverage the data that comes from it to make better decisions. That's I think a second big source of traffic that we're seeing, and now over time, as we're starting to expand into different series within HR. So the different centers of excellence in HR, like D&I and learning and development, is now on our programs that we've launched. We also see an incredible interest in there. So we see a big interest over the front. But funnily enough, usually it's the courses that are a little bit older, that are more established, and that people go for. It's hard to pinpoint where we exactly see it.
Well, no surprise though. Obviously, everything that's taken place over the last year now, it's been a year, I can't believe it, has really leapfrogged HR into the limelight. And, all of these decisions that are being made in organizations need to be data driven and are being data driven, whether that be, obviously track and trace of their own employees, or which offices we should keep open or not, or, or whether it be kind of just the communication piece and the sentiment analysis from surveys, for example, whatever it may be, is all data driven. So those organizations that weren't prepared or didn't have investment in this space are now playing catch up as well. So no surprise, obviously, that you're seeing huge traction from that perspective. Obviously, the title of today's episode, obviously we put the end of the HR specialist. That's something you sent over to me when we was thinking about titles. Why did that come to mind, and what do you mean by the end of the HR specialist?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the HR specialist list, so the traditional specialists that just knew their own subject matter and that was an expert in that and didn't really know anything else in HR. I think that traditional expert is disappearing. And what we're speaking about more and more, and what we're seeing also in the market is a new kind of specialist. We call it a T-shaped HR professional. And the T-shaped HR professional, has their functional expertise. So they are a specialist, but at the same time they also really understand the basic elements in HR. And more traditionally, that has been business acumen. As an HR professional, you need to understand the business, and that's been a drum that different people have been beating.
Hearing that.
But you've heard that before, and
a few times.
Now you see, also something like analytics coming up, and that's also a must-have in order to be a good specialist. You need to understand the business. You need to understand the analytical. You need to be data-driven to a certain extent. And there's two other parts that we're seeing in that regard. You need to be a people's advocate. So you need to really understand the job that you're doing. Be an employee champion. And be a good HR professional. And third or fourth, you need to understand the digital integration. So how can you, the things that you do, the expertise that you have, how can you make sure that you, can enable it through the use of digital technology? That's now almost everywhere, and that will soon be literally everywhere. And that through the employee journey will be integrated everywhere, including in your specialization. So that's for us this idea of a T-shaped HR professional, someone who understands the basics and then is also specialized in their respective field. So it's not that the specialist disappears; it's just that the specialist needs a new set of skills on top of their specialization.
Mm-hmm. I'd love to hear from everyone listening right now. Do you agree with Erik? Let us know. And do you think that you're prepared? I'd love to hear everyone's reaction to that. Like, it completely makes sense to me, Erik, where you're coming from as well. What are the kind of upskilling challenges that HR faces? Because I think no one's going to disagree with you that this change needs to happen. But what are the biggest challenges that HR leaders are facing doing so? And what are some tips or tools that they can use to help them?
Yeah, I think it's first of all seeing where you're standing now and seeing where you want to go. I think a lot of organizations, know they need to do something with analytics, or they know they need to do something with digital. But the much harder question is, okay, what do you need to do with analytics, and what is that standard where you want your HR population to be? Finding or identifying that skills gap, I think, is a very practical first step. That you as an HR leader, but also as an HR professional yourself, that you need to identify. So you need to be able to and we offer a competency framework specifically on this that could be useful, but there's also other resources that you can use to really pinpoint, okay, what is this analytical capability that I need to do my job well, and then how do I start mastering this? And you can do this at the individual level, but you can also do this as an organizational as an HR leader, for your HR population, for the different personas that you have in your organization.
Could you talk about that for a second? Because you got the 4 core capabilities, right, that you discuss. Is that correct?
Yeah, so for us, the 4 capabilities, and I mentioned them briefly, are on the one hand being data driven, and data driven is the ability to read, to interpret, to create data, as information. So you can go beyond, just reading a data point, but you can interpret it, you can work with that. It's about reading the data, and it's about understanding the data and giving that data back, that HR data back to the business, and making that connection with the business. So that's really about being data driven and being a more data-driven HR professional. The second core competency that we're seeing and that we've defined is digital integration. So digital integration is about how do you, see what's happening around you when it comes to technology. That can be technology that's already being implemented within the HR space, but also technology that's, out of the HR space at the moment, and being able to see how that technology will impact, the way we manage people, but also the way we work. So, the broader business that you operate in as an HR professional, how does that work exactly? And how can you then leverage the HR technology in a way that enables you to drive your HR efficiencies and in the end make more impact as an HR professional? And then the third element is about business acumen. I don't think that's new for anyone. As HR, you need to really understand the business, and you need to be a driver of the business strategy, and you need to help co-create the business strategy and enable, make sure that your HR strategy aligns with the business strategy. And the fourth key capability that we've identified is being a people's advocate. So that includes all the almost more traditional skills that you need as an HR professional, being a people's champion, managing employee relations, managing conflict at the workplace. All those more traditional HR skills, I think, are still very, very important. So they're also, in that model, and we call them the employees advocate, or the people's advocate, because that's also still a fundamental role for HR.
Mm-hmm. So probably a good exercise just to sit down now with the team and kind of go through those 4 areas and see where are we right now in each of these elements, and kind of work from there. Probably be a good start. Although you probably won't get through one of those, so you'll have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, it will take some time. We do these exercises with the companies that we work with, and there's a drill down layer, and there's yet another, so with different dimensions per capability, and then there's another layer with different behaviors per dimension, and if you really start mapping, what are the behaviors that we're seeing in our organization, and what are the behaviors, that we would like to see, that's an exercise that will take you some time. But if you do that, you have really a deep understanding of, where are the biggest skill gaps, and then where can I focus my internal development? What are those specific skill gaps that we need to address? So doing that exercise will indeed take quite some time, but I think that will be a very helpful exercise.
What about in terms of the actual HR executives themselves, in terms of their learnings. Obviously, you're working with them, their team. By no means do they have to be a specialist in people analytics. That's not what we're saying. But they do obviously need to understand how to interpret that data. What advice would you give to CHROs, HR directors, VPs that are listening, of where to start? Because it can be pretty daunting. Even if I log into your platform, there's so many areas that you can kind of go down. Where should they start?
Yeah, so the point where you should start, of course, depends on your specific situation. If you talk about HR directors, HR VPs, I don't recommend them to do a specialization course on learning and development, because they probably know everything already 2 times over. For leaders, we have a more advanced leadership program, so that the target group really is the VP, SVP, CHRO population. On the one hand, we also have a program on organizational development and effectiveness. That's of course a topic that's can be immensely deep, and something that's very useful for the very complex issues that you're dealing with as a senior leader. And the third program that we see actually being very, very a lot of senior leaders having quite some appetite for it is our program on digital HR. So a lot of the leaders at the moment, they really understand HR well. But what's coming next? So having a high level insight into what people analytics is, I think is useful, but especially what digital HR is doing. If you make budgets about the different tools that you're doing, are you making sure that the tools that you're buying in the end align with your HR strategy? And having a much more collective, holistic approach to the tools and technology that you deploy in your organization, to make sure that it fits with the culture that you have. So there are synergies there, but also that they the data that is coming from those tools in the end adds to the decision-making power that you have in HR to influence the business. I think that's a level of understanding. That's a topic that's fairly new, and that's also where we see a lot of senior HR leaders getting a lot of value from a program like that.
I think you have to start with what is the business challenge and work back from there, right? As opposed to trying to do everything and going down the rabbit hole of there's so much you can do. It's just focus on what are the core business needs. What are those top 2 or 3 pain points that that you can help the business with, and work back from there and understand what skills, technologies, etc. you need, and work that way to deliver value, as opposed to trying to kind of get your hands on all these new shiny tools and doing a million things, which I see many people do.
What are some of the challenges that you're seeing in this area, Chris? I'd be very curious to know.
That is one of them, is kind of where to start, where to focus our time, attention. Also, many companies assume they need all of these advanced tools to do people analytics, where you can actually do a lot of this in Excel, for example. So I think that's one area people just kind of overcomplicate it almost, to be able to do it. Whereas you could grab multiple sets of data in your business, and just via Excel, you can do some incredible things as well. You don't need to invest huge sums of money. That's one thing. And also, secondly, the skill sets. Again, look in your own business first. You look in your finance team, or look in your marketing, or even supply chain. A lot of these professionals already exist in your business that you can bring into the analytics specialist that exist in other departments. You can bring in to the HR team as well. So I would highly suggest looking internally before you go externally as well. Like, so many VPs of people analytics or head of people analytics I speak to used to work in another department, like finance, supply chain, and then they kind of found this people analytics, which, let's be honest, the role's only been around for the last 5 years, maybe longer than that. How long do you think this role's been around, the people analytics of the head of?
Well, when we started, the first course in the academy was the HR Analytics Leader course, and that was because we exactly got the questions that you're asking now. That's now 4.5 years ago, and we essentially created this initially small course on how do you set up such a department. And then one of the common misconceptions is that the leader often thinks I need to be a data specialist, but very often the key criteria was, and still is, I think, having someone who really understands the business and can lay all the bridges with the different departments that you already mentioned, Chris, on how do you build an internal coalition, and then the data analyst will either come from internally or will at least come later. I think that's, and also the other thing that you're saying about the business needs. quite recently, I had a conversation with a large organization in the financial sector, and that was also the data team, and they said, we've created this we're now processing recruitment data, and we're now creating a dashboard, and they asked me, I would love to have your opinion on, what kind of data should we put in there. I said, okay, what kind of data, do the recruitment people say there should be in there? And they kind of looked at me with a blank face, and I said, you didn't ask them. I said, well, maybe, that's a good starting point to go there first, because, they're going to use the dashboard, so maybe you should ask them first. So taking the business first and seeing, this is an example of HR for HR, but, starting with your stakeholders and the people who you're, supposed to deliver value to, and ask them, what is the information that you need in order to be more effective, instead of, thinking like, oh, what can I do today? And I think there's a lot of examples of where, that second kind of thinking, goes horribly wrong.
I have another question from Ashish. She said, in which part of HR analytics can be most useful to get the best ROI and make better decisions before it's too late?
Yeah, so in which part of HR, I think, when you talk about ROI, it's, you're very often already talking about the business. So what part of the business can you help best, using analytics? And that, I think, goes beyond, HR analytics, but maybe moves to people analytics. What part of the business can you help most, and can we then, either use an ROI measure or another organizational effectiveness measure? Like, are we making an impact on our key stakeholders in the organization, on our shareholders, on the different communities that we serve as an organization? And there's, I think, 10 or 15 other effectiveness metrics that go beyond just the financial measures. Does it help us secure critical resources that we need in order to operate the primary process? If you all can already show a win there, just by leveraging the data on your people, that's already creating value for the business. So I think it's twofold. On the one hand, not looking at HR, but really looking at the business, which part of the business are crucial. And as you said, Chris, that will very much depend, on the kind of business that you're in. So for an oil business, it might be health and safety. While for a fast-moving or a food producer, it might be, overall quality of the product. There are very key metrics that need to, that are fairly essential, or that are very essential, I should say. And on the other hand, it's also, what is the kind of effectiveness metric that you want to take? Is it just, ROI, which is a very flat sum of money, or are you contributing to certain strategic priorities? Because that all also shows, the effect of people analytics. So it can also go beyond just the financial aspect of things.
What are your kind of overall thoughts and views on, the last year, in terms of how it's, because, the last year has really fundamentally changed the way we work. I think forever, there's no going back to whatever we had before. And we're realizing that we need that kind of consumer grade experience for our employees. There's no one size fits all approach. And most systems and tools are designed in many ways as a one size fits all approach. So companies are having to rethink everything, really, let's be honest, and start from scratch almost. What are your thoughts or predictions to where we're going to be going in the next kind of 12 to 18 months? Where do you see businesses go? Because I think only now companies are sort of really getting to grips on what their process would be. What's their work from home policies, etc. What does their benefits look like now? Everything's shifted. So I'd love to hear what your kind of perspective or views are and how you've seen this unfold. I'm not asking you to predict the future, but what are you seeing in terms of clients you speak to every day? What is their thinking? What is their kind of process that and kind of what are some of the things you're hearing that you're excited about that you see companies are doing, or maybe less so?
I think one of the, we just spoke about analytics. Specifically for analytics, a lot of the, predictive models that we used to use to predict, turnover, to predict absenteeism, all those models have been kind of shoveled around, because, we had 1.5 years that have been absolutely remarkable, as in remarkably different from, quite literally extraordinary. So a lot of this historic data and the predictions that you could create, a lot of those models, might not work as well anymore, because we are just living in a very different reality. So I think that's one very interesting aspect. And then when you look, at the role of HR, I think we've only scratched the surface. A lot of us have been talking about the employee experience. I'm very curious, now with companies like Microsoft, Google, Twitter, Square, moving to either fully remote or permanently remote or permanently hybrid work arrangements. What will a digital employee experience look like? How can you onboard people? On the one hand, you can onboard people from around the world if you go into such a setup. At the same time, you want them to be connected to what your company is doing. And then how do you make sure that the vision and the mission that you have as a company, that really resonates with your people? Because I think if you fail to, if your job is just from 9 to 5 and you work from 9 to 5 from home, I think it's very hard to let people stay engaged and monitor if people are working from 9 to 5 or from 9 to 2, so to say.
Yeah.
So I think you need to really step up your game, and that's partially HR, but also partially the broader business. Stepping up your game is in what is it that you're trying to achieve, with your organization? Are you trying to make the world a better place? And can you rally your people, whether they're in the office or, more likely working from home, either permanently or partially of their, part-time of their work? What is the vision that they would wake up, at 6 a.m, even though they're working from home, and they really go for? So I think making that connection will be more and more important, especially when we start moving, at the moment, but at the moment we're in kind of an emergency state, but especially moving forward when this becomes, semi-permanent, how do you really connect people to the vision and mission of your organization? I think those are also themes, the culture aspect to it, that will be crucially important, and that are not really explored at the moment, but that will only increase when it comes to importance.
Mm-hmm. And will be driven and backed by people analytics. So
Exactly. Yeah. Part of it, but also, going beyond people analytics, it's also, building a strong culture, and as HR, training your leadership team to really, showcase those the values that you're pursuing, really showcase the mission that your company is on. Because if that's not being communicated, we can measure all we want, but that's much more the softer work of HR, really embedding that among the leadership team. And I think that there's a lot more, also manual interventions that HR can do, that go beyond people analytics. So really taking action on the insights of, hey, engagement is going down. What do I do now? And actually doing the execution of those actions. I think that's a big responsibility for HR, especially going forward.
I think you're completely right, and I think our most powerful kind of assets, or I'd say assets, are it's the impact we can have is for our managers, right? And leading with empathy. I think those, if you want to call them soft skills, are more important now than ever, because they're on the front line having these conversations with your employees day in, day out, right? You can't automate that.
Yeah,
so we need to make sure our managers and leaders are prepared and have the right skills.
The interesting thing was, if I can add to that, Chris, is the interesting thing was that Gallup found that engagement during the pandemic went down, especially for the managers, because the managers had to do a lot of the restructuring, and engagement. I think 70% of the variance in engagement was in the management population. So how do you then also take care of the managers who might be in the middle and getting the I don't know what the expression is, but feeling the most impact of the such an event? How do you take care of that population? So I think that blends perfectly with the point that you're making, Chris.
Yeah, I think part of it is you've got the battle of trying to take care of yourself whilst taking care of other your team as well. There's I think most managers, and including myself, I didn't even have a chance to even process how I was feeling and my emotions and where I was at, because I was too busy kind of trying to manage that with my team. And again, there was no playbook for this, right? Having those conversations with people who are at home. Everyone had different stresses, whether it was looking after kids while kids online schooling whilst trying to do your work, or looking after parents, whatever it may be. Or just dealing with the overall fact that we're in this pandemic, locked in our homes. That in itself is already enough stress So trying to do that as a leader and then looking after your team and taking care of your team as well was very tough and continues to be very tough.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've experienced the same thing in your own
Yeah,
business.
definitely, and so something that I actually just finished writing an article on specifically this. And a few weeks ago, I was reading some literature on post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic growth, and then the link popped up that in back in the time in Vietnam, when there was a war situation, being in the war is a big crisis, and you essentially had two groups of people. You had the people who stayed in the crisis, didn't really have the resilience to pull through, and then ended up in a post-traumatic stress situation, where they were stuck, where they couldn't develop through it, without help. And you had a small population that experienced post-traumatic growth, which essentially was taking that situation, a very difficult, stressful situation, just like the pandemic, but then finding effective strategies to cope with that and to actually grow through that. And this concept of not just bouncing back to your previous levels, but growing through it and coming out stronger. I've been thinking a lot about what can HR now do to not just get a lot of the more strategic projects that are now put on hold, and it's very operationally serving the business at the moment, but then going through that, saying, hey, what can we learn from it, and how can we grow through it, and how can we come out of this crisis even stronger. And I think that's also a very interesting parallel to think, what are the strategies that we now need to put in place to, hopefully in half a year, when summer is coming and the majority of the population is vaccinated, that we're coming out stronger of the crisis instead of being crippled in the crisis.
Before we wrap up, Erik, we kind of covered quite a lot during this time as well. If there's a sort of a parting piece of advice you give to everyone in terms of, it's focusing around, we kind of obviously the end of the HR specialist. I think we kind of covered that topic, but if there's one parting piece of advice to everyone, what would that be? And also, where can they learn more about the work that you do at AIHR and also connect with you as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think that the take-home message of everything we discussed, Chris, is always keep learning. In the end, you're most valuable if you keep developing yourself and keep providing value. And if you're the one who is able to learn the fastest, to learn the quickest, and who can take that information and process that and learn from it. So you can learn more about the Academy to Innovate HR by typing in Google AIHR. AIHR.com is our website. That's fairly straightforward. We offer courses on essentially all the different specializations in HR, on people analytics, on digital HR. You can all find it on the website. And for more information or to follow me, please connect. I would love to also to stay in touch, and do that on LinkedIn through Erik van Vulpen, Erik with a K, Van Vulpen, VULP, and that's essentially it. I'd love to stay in touch, connect with me. I think that's the best way to do so.
Fantastic. Well, look, it's good seeing you again. It's been a while. Let's not leave it another year next time before we say hello again. And for everyone listening, make sure you go and check out the great work that the AIHR are doing. If you just Google it, you'll find them straight away as well. The link's going to be in the comment section as well if you want to click on that to make things easier as well. Apart from that, also thank you for all of your questions and taking the time to tune in. If you enjoyed the live stream, enjoyed the episode, please take a second to tag in colleagues, hit that like button, let LinkedIn know that you like us as well, and share, and hit the share button as well, and share with your LinkedIn community and followers. Apart from that, enjoy the rest of your day, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks.
Much appreciated. Bye, Chris.